What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Before we even entertain the idea of a truce, or who knows, maybe even the entire peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, it is very important to understand whether Putin even wants peace or not. Which benefits will he get after signing the ultimate ceasefire? Will the world ever recognize the occupied territories as a part of Russia? We don't think so, so maybe it is better for Putin to never end this war for the sake of his regime's survival, right?
In other words, yes, but no. He supports the idea, but qualifies it with numerous questions about what it would mean for Kursk, the front line, rearmament, all of which he says demands painstaking study.
Now we're talking about the right things. We're not discussing some far-off dream of a wishful thinking scenario that might someday, somewhere materialize. We're talking about an unpredictable future that could flip on its head within months or drag on for the entire decade. The prospects are murky, the stakes are astronomical, and any talk of peace must be dissected with a healthy dose of skepticism and brutal honesty. Let's strip away the fancy rhetoric, the empty promises, and the glittering illusions that are so typical of anything related to politics, and instead focus on what might truly lie beneath this veneer of a ceasefire that some say is imminent. So today, let's try to answer the following questions. Does Putin really want ceasefire? Is it about that time he realized the horrible dead end that Russia is facing, and the inevitable impoverishment of the big and the most loyal chunk of the nation? While it may feel all these are just big words with no justification behind them, the only reason we do not see such things already happening inside Russia is because the war still goes on. Its end will serve as a trigger, and so far, nobody in the Kremlin, definitely not Putin, is ready to press it. A peace deal, if it ever comes to fruition, is not a neatly packaged outcome with a clearly defined schedule. We could be looking at a scenario unfolding in a matter of months, or a more likely possibility, a standoff that lingers for more years. There is an obvious, almost inconvenient truth here. Discussing a definitive peace deal without anchoring it to any tangible time frame is nothing more than an attempt to calm down the media and give people hope. 100%, at some point in the future there will be peace between Russia and Ukraine. But how soon? 10, 20, 50 years from now on? Try saying this to the people of these countries and see their reactions. For this reason, predicting an exact moment for peace is as impossible as trying to catch a frozen pea with your mouth, which was dropped out of the airplane flying at 30,000 feet. The future political landscape is in constant change, and any peace arrangement negotiated today might be rendered obsolete by the shifting allegiances, unforeseen crises of tomorrow, and plain and simple unfortunate and unpredictable events, completely out of people's controls. Someone did something without somebody else knowing, and well, there you go. Another chain reaction that culminated in a new escalation. It is essential to understand that the talk of truce or peace is fundamentally about the cessation of hostilities, be it temporary or permanent, and not about some elaborate set of commitments that might or might not be enforced. When we speak of peace, we are not referring to a sanitized Hollywood version of harmony, where people of different nations hold their hands and dance in circles, being super happy. Instead, it is the undecorated reality of a ceasefire that may simply pause the bloodshed without addressing the underlying issues. Even the very act of discussing peace carries its own risks. It sets expectations that might later become a double-edged sword. If the sides agree to a halt in hostilities, only to see that the original problems remain untouched, the fragile calm could quickly devolve into renewed violence. In this context, the foundation for any conversation about peace must be built on a realistic assessment of time, a recognition of inconsistency, and a sober understanding that any agreement reached is as much a temporary solution as it is a potential prelude to future conflicts. Putin, however ridiculous we might consider him, understands it as well. That is why he is willing to do a partial ceasefire we have right now on the table. because it simply buys him more time to figure out the next step. The question is, will this next step bring us closer towards the end, or will it put Russia deeper into the void of internal problems? In this high-stakes game of international chess, the key players are not mere faceless entities, but men whose ambitions and egos are as palpable as the tensions that crackle on the diplomatic front lines. When we talk about any potential truce between Russia and Ukraine, it is impossible to ignore the intricate dance of personalities involved. At the center of this drama are figures like Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Volodymyr Zelensky, each with their own agendas, strengths, and vulnerabilities. Their interactions, full of both open confrontations and behind closed-door talks, add layers of complexity to an already not-so-simple situation. Take, for example, the curious case of Trump and Putin. On the surface, there is an unmistakable feeling that these two could find common ground, as if a secret handshake between them might magically transform us into the era of peace. Just like this. Trump's well-known insistence on wielding his influence combined with his love for dramatic pronouncements often borders on the absurd.
No, get those lights off! Off! Turn them off, they're too bright, turn them off! Turn them off, let's go, ready? Turn off the lights! Turn off the lights! Turn off the lights!
Yet, he appears to be playing a dangerous game. One where his own image and legacy might be destroyed by the promise of ending a protracted conflict. However, relying on such theatrics is a risky gambit, on one that is miscalculated could backfire spectacularly. In contrast, Putin's motivations are shrouded in a mixture of strategic calculation and an almost unbelievable disregard for human costs. His actions, often veiled in a mixture of intimidation and calculated diplomacy, reveal a man who is less concerned with forging a lasting peace and more with preserving his grip on power. The entire negotiation process is further complicated by the dynamic between these leaders. While Trump might love the idea of a grand peace deal that cements his legacy, Putin's maneuvers are guided by a blend of opportunism and an enduring commitment to the status quo for conflict, a status that has, for all practical purposes, become a part of Russia's identity. That is one of the biggest reasons why Putin is more willing to keep the conflict brewing, at least at a slower pace, rather than ending it completely. We'll talk about it in more details about it, while this is the mindset of Putin, in just a couple of minutes. Adding to the mix is the fact that these discussions are not conducted in a vacuum. The political realities on the ground, including Ukraine's incredible resistance and its reliance on foreign aid, ensures that any overtures made in the halls of power are shadowed by a deep-seated mistrust. In the end, the interactions among these power players underscore a critical truth. Even if high-profile negotiations lead to a temporary cessation of hostilities, the underlying ambitions, rivalries, and personal agendas will continue to shape and potentially sabotage any move towards genuine peace. Beyond the realm of political maneuvering lies an equally potent force: the economy. In the midst of this high-stakes drama, economic pressures and sanctions serve as the invisible hand that shapes decisions and constrains actions. One quick note, guys, here, at the moment of recording this video, the Trump's administration mentioned they will consider relieving some sanctions from Russia, but no feasible action has been taken just yet. So yeah, the war's cost is skyrocketing, and every passing day witnesses a mounting financial burden that threatens to break even the most robust economies. For Russia, the economic implications are particularly dangerous. After all, this is the biggest country in the world that might not have the most influential economy, but a very important one, which is tightly also related to other economies around the world. Just to name a few: oil, natural gas, lumber, and grains are the ones we should definitely be cautious about. With spiraling defense expenditures, ballooning debt, and an entire military apparatus dependent on expensive volunteer recruitment schemes, the price tag of this conflict is becoming unsustainable. And it looks like Putin finally started to realize it. Though there is little he can do, his hands are tied at this point. The Central Bank of Russia tried to warn him several months ago, but as you know it, he ignored them completely. Well, now it is time to face the consequences. The best analogy here would be that if the Russian economy fell below the event horizon and is slowly sucked deeper into the void of the black hole. Sooner or later, the devastating consequences will reveal themselves. It is not about if the war economy survives the end of war. It is when millions of people employed by the military sector, whether these are tank assemblers, camouflage net tailors, or soldiers themselves, find their employment opportunities obsolete. And the best possible equivalent will be much harder manual labor for no more than, 20% of wartime salaries. Multiply this problem by millions of people and we can see the most likely outcome right in front of our eyes. The real estate market also, with favorable interest rates sponsored by the military, will have its own massive impact on the rest of Russia's housing. Defense contractors who used to enjoy billions of dollars in government contracts will now cease to exist, firing thousands of people. And guess what? This will not be the people who oppose Putin. People who work in military industries are among his biggest supporters. So disappointing them like that will most certainly turn 99% of them away from Putin in an instant. And since everything in the economy is tightly related, a cessation of hostilities will basically serve as a trigger for the nationwide impoverishment. This is the future that Putin's Russia is facing when the war ends. That is why the biggest question Putin has right now is if he should even end this war and why. The notion of peace, as it is being discussed by those in power, is unfortunately nothing but an elaborate illusion. At least for now, until certain timelines and precise requirements are established, presented to other side, and agreed upon by both countries. And we're not saying this is something bad, no. Once again, it is better to talk peace without actually meaning peace, so that at least the people relax a little, start having a hope once again, and leaders make decisions with more or less cool heads, not with minds full of hatred and revenge.
Fire, just agreed to a little while ago. Now we have to go to Russia and hopefully President Putin will agree to that also.
It is better this way than not talking at all, or hinting that the war will last for another decade or more. When political leaders speak of a ceasefire, they often do so in terms that are meant to lull the masses into a false sense of security. They paint a picture of a grand transformation, a moment when hostilities will miraculously disappear overnight and a new era of prosperity and stability emerges. Yet, as anyone with a keen eye can attest, such promises are rarely more than a temporary pause, a brief intermission in a never-ending play of power and counterpower. In reality, the dynamics of warfare have a way of infiltrating even the most carefully crafted agreements. A ceasefire, whether it is presented as truce or a peace deal, is nothing more than a temporary cessation of fire that leaves the deeper issues unresolved. It is a stopgap measure that does little more than delay the inevitable resumption of hostilities once the veneer of calm wears off. The harsh truth is that the underlying causes of conflict, be it national ambitions, historical grievances, economic disparities, and personal vendettas, well, these remain as potent as ever, lurking in the shadows and ready to ignite the slightest provocation. Even the process of negotiating any kind of agreement is riddled with contradictions and compromises that render the final product obsolete and hollow. The small print in any deal, the clauses that are meant to protect one party or another, serve only to highlight the inherent mistrust between adversaries. A ceasefire might halt the flow of bullets and bombs for a while, but it does little to address the core issues that led to the conflict in the first place. But then, once again, isn't it what Putin exactly wants? Because for him, there is no win-win solution. If he wins the war, he then loses the economy and the support of people. If he loses the war, well, then things get even worse for him. So isn't it better to just keep fighting the war you know you will never win? Well, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to my channel. If you wish to support my work, you can become a channel member and receive some additional perks. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.